Coming up on this episode, the Warriors sink to further embarrassment, falling to their heaviest defeat of the season against the New Orleans Pelicans at home on Wednesday night. Talk about that loss, and then I'll get into more of the trade speculation and reports that continue to emerge around the franchise. Yes, welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast after a sad, embarrassing, horrific 141-105 defeat for the Warriors against the Pelicans at Chase Center on Wednesday night. I labelled it in my post-game report for Blue Man Hoop. I labelled it a sad demise here for the Warriors and a stunning turnaround based off the fact that less than 3 months ago, on October 30, I think it was, the Warriors went into New Orleans and beat the Pelicans 130-102 on their home floor by 28. And now, 2.5 months later, you get the complete opposite. A 64-point turnaround from that performance on October 30 to this one, 10, 11 weeks later. Embarrassing. And I think the biggest takeaway from me over these last couple of games against Toronto on Sunday and then the Pelicans game is that this has moved past a talent issue. This has moved past a roster issue. This has moved past not quite being good enough. And that was the case for me over the first 30-plus games of the season, was that there was very few to no times where I really questioned the effort that players were putting in on the floor or the willingness for players to play for each other, to play for Steve Kerr. And that's obviously, as a fan, I can live with, as long as you're playing hard. If you're not quite good enough, you're not quite good enough. If you don't quite execute perfectly, especially in the clutch moments, which is what happened to the Warriors throughout much of the first 30 games, as long as you're still playing hard, as long as I'm still seeing effort, then I can live with that, right? I won't, my level of complaining won't extend too far if that's the case. However, what I've seen in the last 2 games has been as bad as I can remember over the past few years, especially in this, I guess, Steve Kerr era, Steph Curry era. This is a chemistry thing now. This is a cultural thing now, where you literally, do you know how hard it is to lose by 36 in the NBA? Like, every team has talent. Every team, even the Detroit Pistons, have talent, right? Guys that can put up points. Now, yes, I know there's guys on other teams that can put up points, which means teams can put up 140, 150, but it is bloody hard to lose by 36 in an NBA game. It really is. And there's no way you're losing by that much if your issues don't extend further than the talent differential. And instead of that, they actually go into the chemistry of the team, the cultural facet of the team, the investment of the players to, again, play for each other and play for the coach, the willingness to do the little things, to scrap around on the floor, to fight for loose balls. Like, how many times did we see the Warriors yesterday just be second to the ball off a rebound when the ball's in dispute on the floor? Like, that is what I'm seeing right now. There's no defensive connectedness at all. After giving up 76 first half points against the Raptors on Sunday, you come out and concede 46 in the first quarter to the Pelicans. 9 threes. Now, yes, some of this is the Pelicans' hot shooting, whatever. Some of the closeouts, some of the really just simple missed coverages defensively, we're getting to a point of no return here where, again, the trade deadline is too far away now. You have to make a move. You have to do something before then. Otherwise, you're going to get to, if we've got another 3 weeks, nearly a month of this, then the season's just gone. The season's nearly gone as is. So they're 17-20, down to 12th in the Western Conference. Remember, they do not have their first round pick this season. I think it's top 3 protected. So it's not like you can pack it in and tank. You've got to have a crack, especially around Steph. And, Steph's half the issue now. He's had a bit of an interesting stat I was looking at yesterday. He's had 4 of his last 8 games now have been 18 points or less, including the last 2 where he had 9 against Toronto and 15 yesterday on 4 of 13 shooting. So 4 of his last 8 have been 18 points or less. In the first, I think, 29 games of the season, he had 3 with 18 points or less. So that just goes to show you the poor form, the poor stretch that Steph is going through by his standards over these last 7 or really the 7-game homestand, you could say. And so there's very little going right for the Warriors. There's nothing that you can necessarily point at and say, that's working well, or this player's playing well. I tweeted out during the game yesterday in the first half, Warriors find themselves down 25. I think, mate, the only positive is that I guess Moses Moody's increasing his trade value. I mean, if you're getting to that point, then that's a disaster. When that's the kind of shining light that you can look at. And to be fair, Moses played well. And the Warriors, much like the Raptors game, they clawed themselves back into the contest. They found themselves down 25, as I said, early in the second quarter. Got back to 13, a manageable 13 at halftime. Down to 10 early in the third quarter. Was still within striking distance with 3 or 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. Still around that kind of 13, 14 point differential. And then the Pelicans just go on a run and absolutely blow them out. And deservedly so. I think that 15-point margin against Toronto on Sunday night, I think that flattered the Warriors. That was more like a 20, 25-point defeat, if not more. So, again, in some ways, I think I was actually glad that the Pelicans won by so much because it further enhances the push for something to happen here. Because you cannot be just continuing, as Steph said in his post-game, the definition of, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically the definition of insanity is doing things over and over and expecting different results. Doing the same thing repeatedly. And that's what the Warriors are doing right now. They are going out there and showing little effort. Steve called them fragile in the post-game. I personally think there's no coincidence here that this period, like this 7-game homestand, 2-5, but especially these past few games, there's no coincidence from me that this stretch has come with less than a month now until the trade deadline and with speculation heating up. Because even before this stretch, they were a below-average team who were, at one point I think they got 10th in the West when the Lakers lost a few in a row there. Aside from that, they haven't been in the playoff picture since basically their 5-1 start to the season. And so there's no coincidence to me that some of these players are horribly out of form because they have lost confidence. And also because that emanates from the trade speculation. And I think it just makes the whole environment, everyone's uptight. You get the report from Shams a few hours ago that everyone is on the trade table, bar Steph. You get a report from the Athletics, Anthony Slater, saying the Warriors and the Raptors have been in discussions on a substantial level revolving around Pascal Siakam in recent weeks. So we're going weeks back here. And there's no doubt that players hear the noise, whether it's real or not. They hear the noise. And so to me, there's just no coincidence, again, that this period is one where players are uptight, where they're kind of back in their shelves a little bit, where they might think to themselves, subconsciously, not consciously, but subconsciously, they might think to themselves, okay, why would I listen to my head coach, or why would I listen to my assistant coach? Why would I listen to my veteran players when I might not be here in a month's time? Why would I put my body on the line defensively or dive on the ground for that loose ball when I might not be here in a month? That is legitimately human nature, in my opinion. That is human nature. And I'll give you a very real corresponding comparison, I suppose, to this. So my AFL team. Collingwood, we won the premiership last year now. But we had a really bad stretch through the last 4 or 5 games of the season where we lost to the third worst team in the league one weekend. Were really bad, and everyone was questioning, like, what's going on here? I think we won maybe like 16 of our first 18 games or something like that. And then, 23 game season, I think we lost 3 of our last 5 or 4 of our last 5, went into the finals in really bad form. And the entire time I was saying, nah, we'll be right. We'll be right, because I watched the last 4 or 5, I watched every game, but I watched the last 4 or 5 games of the season, and players flat out didn't care. And the reason they didn't care is because 3/4 of the way through the season, they'd already locked up top spot on the ladder. They couldn't go anywhere. They literally couldn't go anywhere. And so I'm watching these games thinking, the players flat out do not want to put their body on the line, because the only thing that can happen here is they can get injured. And then they miss finals. They miss the most important part of the season. And so we'd lost games simply by the fact that the players, I think, again, subconsciously, didn't try as hard as what they had in the first 3/4 of the season. And so we lose some games. Everyone starts questioning what's going on. And then finals come around. Yep, we've got something to play for now. You go out, they win 3 finals in a row, win the premiership. Best team in the league. And I think that's exactly what's happening with... Now, obviously, it's a very different situation where the Warriors are 12th in the Western Conference and really struggling. But I think it's similar in terms of this period is a period where I think players are subconsciously thinking, why would I do this? Why would I work this hard? Why would I put in this effort? Why would I listen to him? Why would I do that when I might not be on the team in a month's time? And I think you might find that past the trade deadline, the Warriors might legitimately just be a better team regardless of what they actually do trade-wise. They might be a better team simply by the fact of, okay, this is our team now. This is what we've got for the next few months. It won't change. This is the rotation that we've got. Everything is way more set in stone now than what we've got right now, which is speculation regarding almost every player. And so I truly think like this is just a period where we're just going to have to wait it out until February 8th. And then you might find the Warriors are a much better team again, regardless of what they do. But in saying that, Steph was also imploring his teammates, like, you cannot let this distract you. You have to keep fighting hard. And this is the case for every NBA team, is they go through these rumors and speculation about what could happen before the trade deadline. It just is the NBA. And I agree with that to an extent. And the best teams, the best players will compartmentalize that, put it to the side on game day when they're on the floor, and they will continue to play their best. But I think for most, and I know I would probably be in this situation, and maybe it makes me less of a person, but I do think that if my future was up in the air, that I might, again, subconsciously not work as hard as what I otherwise might. It can go both ways. So I'm looking at Moses Moody, for example, and I think he's actually coming out and performing like someone's like, no, I want to be on the team. Like, do not trade me. Where he has 18 field goal attempts yesterday, which is 5 more than any other player, not just a Warriors player, any other player on the floor. He had 5 more. Before yesterday's game, he'd only taken more than 10 shots in a game twice this season. So he was super aggressive, to the point where he was potentially too aggressive at times in the second half. And his field goal percentage hurt as a result. I think he was maybe 4 of 7 at one stage, ended up 8 of 18. Still probably the lone bright spark for the Warriors in that game, except for the fact that he got injured. And now he's got a bit of a calf issue, which could put him out, which is a real shame. Super frustrating given he'd only just returned to the rotation. And this was his second consecutive 21-point game. Really positive performances from Moses Moody. And again, aside from that, what else are you going to look at as a positive for Golden State? But although Moses might have responded well to all the rumor and speculation and whatever else, I think most players are uptight. And Andrew Wiggins, he's broken. Andrew Wiggins he's got 11 points in his last 3 games combined. And you're just watching him yesterday, and you're just like, what has happened to this man? And it is a complete lack of confidence. It has spiraled out of control, where he can't dribble more than 4 or 5 times in a row without losing the ball or just like not handling the ball correctly. It's incredible, really. It is downright incredible, the drop-off that we've had here. From the point where he's an all-star 2 years ago to he's still a starting caliber 3-and-D player last season to, we have to move him back to the bench now to, if he wasn't in the rotation, the Warriors might be better for it. That's sad. It's legitimately sad. It's actually sad to say. It is, but just watching him over these last couple of games, I mean, what has happened? What has happened? There is nothing. I mean, his defense at times is still okay. I'll give him that. Some of the point of attack defense, he's still fighting a little bit on that end, but offensively, you can't shoot, can't handle the ball, blows layups, blows mismatches when he's got smaller opponents in the post. I don't know. He's going to be off the team within a month. I just, as long as, the only issue now is that I don't know what team wants to take him. I saw a report that the Cavs have interest, which is ironic given they originally drafted him. Never played a game, obviously, for the franchise, but yeah, I just wonder what team is going to want Andrew Wiggins right now and what the Warriors are going to be able to get of any value in return. So, I don't know. It's an absolute mess right now. Further showcased in giving up 141 points. And that's the thing, defensively. Because that's where the effort, right, shows up. Because if the effort goes and the chemistry goes, the hard work isn't there, then that shows up mostly on the defensive end. Where offensively, like, guys are always going to want to play offense because they're going to want their numbers. And it's easy to play offense, right? It's easy to try on offense, to put up shots. Defensively, are you willing to fight through this screen? Are you willing to close out as hard as you can? Like, that's where it shows up. And there's no coincidence that the Warriors have given up 141 points to the Pelicans, 133 to a very average Toronto Raptors offense. Now, yes, Draymond being out absolutely hurts that, and he will come back and he will help to a degree, but I can promise you he won't help to the degree that the Warriors need without everyone else buying in and without a reinvigoration of connectedness and hard work and chemistry. So, we've got an upcoming 4-game road trip. Now, things don't get any easier. Chicago, Milwaukee back-to-back. Hopefully Draymond's back, but again, Chris Paul's still out, GP2's out. Sounds like Moses probably going to be on the sidelines as well. Yeah, I mean, something's got to happen here within the next week or two. You cannot wait until the February 8th trade deadline. I put out a post on YouTube yesterday after the game, just asking if anyone had any questions, comments. So I'll speak through that, and then that'll kind of bring out some more discussion before we finish. Cracker Racker Ding Dong, one of the great YouTube usernames that. Moody, 21 back-to-back games, should have been playing huge minutes all season long. TJD could be 20-plus minutes a night with proper minutes. We go on a run then on Q, Kerr's plan rotation hits, and we get dumpstered beyond redemption. Yeah, so the Moody thing, like, I don't want to claim revisionist history here. I'm one that I've said the whole season, Moses should be playing, but you can't tell me that he should be playing significant minutes without telling me who he plays over. And I mean, it's easy to say, oh, just give him the minutes and just work it out, like work something out. I guess that makes sense. But still, the minutes are going to come from someone. And I don't think I think Clay is the last two Clay games, he's actually been okay. I mean, he scored 13, 14 points, hasn't played a whole lot because they got blown out. Been efficient. I think it was 5 of 10 shooting. So, because he's the one, right, where Moody, you take some of Clay's minutes and give them to Moody. Like, I get that. But I still think he's a 25 to 30-minute player in this league. And the whole issue is I've just had is, yes, you can be clamoring for Moody to play more. I just don't know who he plays over. And that's why I've had sympathy for Steve in regards to the Moody situation. Because the Warriors are pretty deep at that kind of position, right? Where you've got the likes of Clay, obviously, where GP2 kind of, when he's fit, he plays in that role. They've obviously got Pajemski, who they like. Obviously, he's a different player to Moses, but they like him because he's that secondary ball handler and playmaker out there. So, yes, it's frustrating now for Moses because he would have got a significant opportunity over these next few games had he not got injured. And we don't know exactly. By the time you're listening to this, we might know what the extent of that injury is. But it is frustrating. The one thing I will say about Moses is that he might actually be the best option to be, and I've said about this previously, he might be the best option as the kind of fifth starter, which sounds crazy about a guy who was recently out of the rotation completely. But when you're always looking at what's the Warriors starting lineup, what should it look like, then it's always Steph, Clay, let's put Draymond in there, and then, okay, two others. Well, if you need a small forward, like Moses gives you that balance of shooting. He's probably the third best shooter on the team, while not going 3-guard heavy with like CP3 or Pajemski, and retaining a bit of your size integrity because he's 6'6", long wingspan, and can prove a factor on that end of the floor. And so in terms of team balance, he could actually be like the fifth starter on this team, where it's Steph, Clay, Moody, Draymond, TJD, maybe, rather than that Moody spot being a CP3 or a Pajemski where you're giving up size, or a Kuminga where you're giving up shooting, and the spacing just becomes so much worse. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, do these last two performances, do they signal to the front office that they should keep Moses, or do they signal that, teams might be more interested in him now, so he's going to be off the team? There's more chance he's going to be off the team within a month. I don't think it makes any difference. I don't think 2 games is, if you're a rival team, I don't think 2 games are making you fall in love with Moses Moody any more than you might have been before that. And I don't think they're also screaming out to the Warriors that, we desperately need to keep this guy. I don't think that's the case. I mean, it's an 82-game season. You can't fall in love with a 2-game span, as impressive as he's been. And the other thing, you mentioned TJD. It kind of goes by the wayside that he had a career-high 19 points yesterday. Most of those came in garbage time where no one really cared. I mean, JK had one of the best dunks I've ever seen. Huge, vicious dunk in the fourth quarter, and no one gave a crap because it cut the lead to 38 or something like that. Like, it was an incredible dunk. And so that just goes to show you, I guess, the lack of care factor by that point in the fourth quarter, where TJD gets some buckets and actually has a career-high 19 points. He does have a natural scoring ability that belies the fact that he's 6'9" with no jump shot. And we've seen a couple of and I'm not saying that Steve needs to start running plays or whatever for him in the main rotation, but there's been a couple of plays in this last garbage time where he's actually shown some skill as a post-up player, and he did that in college a little bit. And again, I'm not saying that all of a sudden we come out next game and TJD is playing in the first quarter and Steph and Clay are out there and TJD is like, yep, give me the ball on the block. let me go to work. That's not going to happen. But I think he's got more skill, and he's just got real natural scoring talent. Now, obviously, most of that right now is coming off playmaking of others and just diving to the rim. But I mean, still, that's not the easiest thing to do. Like we've seen with James Wiseman and others in the past, where this stuff seems simple, but it's just not. And so, again, you're quite right in saying he could be 20 plus points a night with proper minutes. I'm not going to say 20, but yeah, up there, close to. Like he could be 16 to 18. And I do think at some point he could be a 16 to 17 to 18 point, 10 to 12 rebound guy every night on an NBA team as a starter. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we can look at how bad this season's been, but I guess we're going to have the positives of TJD and Pods, I suppose, as well. Oaklandish 89 says, not one trade is going to salvage this season or put us in a place to contend. The Warriors lack a true second option, a center over 6'10" that can put up a fight against elite bigs and point of attack defensive wings that can shoot well. Do you see Dunleavy going... Actually, before I get into that final question, yes, you're right. No one trade is going to salvage this season or put us in a place to contend. I did mention last episode, do you owe Steph the chance to just, let's get to the 7 seed, let's play the Thunder or something in round 1, and maybe you're more experienced. Maybe Steph can prove a better player than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and you give Steph the opportunity to, again, at least have a puncher's chance and say, we've got you to this position, if you're absurdly good, then maybe we can win a playoff round or 2. Do you owe him that chance? When realistically, you're not going to go into 4 playoff rounds as the underdog and win all 4 of them. You're just not. But do you owe him the chance to maybe steal a series or 2? Do you owe him that chance? Because obviously making a move now is going to increase that chance. But you are right. The Warriors are not going to be a perfect team. The Warriors are not going to be a contending team post-trade deadline. They will not be. There is not one move that can do it. There's not 2 moves. There's just not that player out there that's going to make that much of a difference. There's just not. I concocted a trade yesterday where the Warriors got Siakam and Dejounte Murray. Both. Now, it was wishful thinking, yes. But even so, adding those 2 guys, would it be different? Yep. Would it be better? Yep, probably. Well, it has to be from what we're seeing at the moment. Would it make the Warriors a top 3 team in the West? Probably not. Probably not. So that's, I suppose, how far away they are right now. Is they're just not even close. And so any player that's realistically acquirable in the next few weeks is just not going to make enough of a difference. But does that matter? Or do you just give Steph the chance? Just fight to get to the playoffs and then give him any semblance of chance? Because once you're there, you're a chance, especially when you've got Steph Curry on your team. And the final question was, do you see Dunleavy going balls to the wall and essentially gutting the youth movement salary for a complete team makeover by or before the deadline? Well, it sounds, by that Shams report earlier, it sounds like he is willing. I'd be surprised if Draymond and Clay are not going to be off the team after the trade deadline. They're just not. I mean, Clay's actually played fairly well recently over these last few games. Draymond just not going to have any value to teams. Clay's not going to have any value to teams aside from the fact he's an expiring contract if they want to give up money. And so you'd have to, in order to give up those guys and what they've done for the franchise over a dozen years, you would have to get a superstar player in return. We're talking about, obviously, the Raptors trading DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard in 2018. We're talking, you'd have to get a superstar back. And the value of those guys, that's just not going to happen. So I just don't think they're going to be on the table. Of course, this report is a sign that if Mike Dunleavy picks up the phone and one of the 29 other general managers have called him up, so long as they don't mention the name Stephen Curry, Mike Dunleavy will hear you out and will have a conversation with you. Now, what that leads to, we'll wait and see. I don't think conversations around Clay and Dre would ever lead to actually anything happening. but it's just a sign that, hey, he will listen to anything you have to say regarding any player on this team outside Steph Curry. The funny thing is, like you're talking about gutting the youth movement. There was a little bit of talk on the latest episode of the Warriors Plus Minus podcast with the Athletic guys. Like, is Pods a guarantee to go past for everything he's done this season? Is he a guarantee to be on the team past the trade deadline? Because they discussed like the fact that he's built real value now with how well he's played. And so is there a team out there that says, yeah, we'll actually give you this really good piece or something or whatever. We'll make this deal if you throw Pods in there because we think he's a real asset. Maybe. The funny thing I've landed on is that of the four kind of young players, if we kind of combine Moody, Kuminga, Pods, TJD together, if you have to ask me right now which player is most likely to be on the team in a month's time, like past the trade deadline, it's actually TJD. Of all four, it's TJD. He's most likely to be on the team for a multitude of reasons. One, he's only the second genuine center on the roster behind Loon, and with the way Loon's been playing for the majority of this season, you cannot be putting extra pressure on him because we've seen that hasn't worked out too well. Well, it has in the last couple of seasons, but this season, putting that extra pressure on Loon, things have caught up with him a little bit. TJD's on a great contract where he's making less than $2 million a season on average over the next 4 years or 3 seasons after this one. Great contract. And he's also got the least value of those 4 players in a trade. Like, teams are obviously going to covet Moody, Kuminga, Pods ahead of him. So he's actually, of the 4 players, I think he's the most likely to still be on the team. Last thing I will say here. So we had the report in that podcast episode, Warriors Plus Minus. Slater brought up Dejounte Murray, who was a bit of a weird, curious name to throw out on the agenda. And I think he did it more than just a suggestion, the way I kind of read it or listened to it. It was more than just a suggestion of, how about Dejounte Murray? Like, they kind of went into it in a way that made me think, okay, maybe this is actually a genuine possibility. I think the initial thought was, okay, what is he adding? Like, he's another guard. Do we need another guard added to this roster? You've got Steph, Clay, Pods, CP3. I think this would be a CP3 move. I think this would be a move Atlanta getting off future money with Dejounte about to start a 4-year, $110 million contract. It'd be about them getting off money. They get a nice young player in return, maybe, and they get a pick or something like that. And obviously the contract should have to match because CP3 actually makes over $10 million more than Dejounte this season. He's not a perfect fit for the Warriors by any means. So some of the spacing issues, which I wrote about today or yesterday, the ironic thing is that the Warriors revolutionized the game with Steph and Clay and the ability to shoot the ball and, the 3-point line, whatever else. And the ironic thing is that after doing that, they are now really limited 3-point shooting wise behind Steph and Clay. Moses is okay, but he's still, league average. Dario's good for a big man, but he's a bench player playing 15 minutes. They really lack shooting. And Dejounte Murray wouldn't help that, despite the fact that he is shooting a career high, 39.4%, I think it is, from 3-point range, on a career high 6.1 attempts, I think it is, per game or something like that. So his 3 ball's actually been really good this season. I'm not sure I would completely put my faith in that because he's less than 34%, I think, on his career. He's had 3 years under 33% out of his 7 seasons. His other really only good three-point shooting season came, I think it was his rookie year where he shot 39.1%. So would he be more of a spacing threat than Chris Paul? Yes. But the Warriors might want more than that. They might want more of a shooter if they're going to be willing to give up Chris Paul, because I think they love Chris Paul, and the lack of Chris Paul over the last couple of games has really been evident. So, yes, you'd be committing to more money, and keeping that salary spot open would be important, but you also have to question, is it wise for the Warriors to commit to more money when they're in the position they are right now? Because if you're going to acquire Dejounte Murray, you have to trade Chris Paul. It can't be Andrew Wiggins for Dejounte Murray, because that makes no sense with the fit of the team. He's also not the same defender that he was. Like, if you think of Dejounte Murray, you think, and part of the reason Atlanta got him was to kind of help Trae Young in that backcourt and limit some of his deficiencies, be the primary point of attack defender. And he's still averaging 1.4 steals per game, which is higher than anyone on the Warriors, I might add. But he's not the same defender that he was, where he was all NBA defensive second team in his second season. He was the steals leader in 2022. 6'10" wingspan, long utilized that to great effect. But defensive box plus minus, defensive win shares, both at a career low this season. So if you're expecting him to come in and be this difference-making primary point of attack defender, then again, that's a faith that is probably not well directed based on what we've seen from him in the last year or so. But again, maybe a new environment, maybe you do have some optimism there that he could return to being that guy. And he's still young. I mean, the guy's 27 years old. He's still young enough to get back to his best defensively. But I think the main thing with him is he is averaging over 21 points per game this season, and the Warriors need a good, consistent second option. And I think Dejounte Murray would provide that. He's scored under 10 points once in 36 games this season. He scored under 15 just 7 times in 36 games. So what that tells me is you kind of know what you're getting every night. Like, you're going to get at least 15 points and anywhere between 15 and 25. Maybe he has the odd 30-point game. He is a good rebounder, nearly 5 a game. He's still an excellent playmaker. He can be your point guard when Steph is off the floor. He can take the Chris Paul role there. He averaged over 9 assists, I think it was the 2021-22 season with the Spurs. He's still averaging over 5 assists a game with the Hawks since moving there, even despite playing second forward to Trae Young. So I actually like the fact that his numbers and stuff are still pretty good. Like, his personal numbers are still pretty good, even though he's playing next to Trae, not getting as much opportunity. And so the fit with Steph, I think, actually provides some optimism there, especially if he can get back to his best defensively. But I guess the question marks, why hasn't it worked in Atlanta? Is it a Dejounte Murray thing? Or is it just Atlanta and their general issues as a whole? That's kind of what you've got to work out as a team that might have interest in Dejounte Murray. But right now, is he going to be the difference-making player that all of a sudden surges the Warriors up the standings and into genuine contention? No, he won't. But is it something different to what we're seeing right now? Would it be something better than what we're seeing right now? Then yes. And if that's the case, then you've got to look at it. And if the price is right, you might pull the trigger and do it. There actually is a world where they could get Siakam, and if they really want to change things up drastically, there's a world where they could make a couple of moves, because they've obviously got Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins, $54 million, over $54 million in total. They're about $55 million. Kuminga, Moody, Pods, 2026 and 2028 first-round picks. Like, they could go out and get 2 very good players. They could get Murray and Siakam. They could get both if they're really willing to do it. But again, are those 2 guys coming into your team and making a huge difference to the point where now you're a contender? I'm losing hope in that because they're just so far away now. They really are. And I mean, there is the old saying in sport. I'm not sure if this is an Australian thing or if this is an American thing as well. But there's the old saying is, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. And I do think that like these last two games have been the very worst of the Warriors, and they're not 36 points worse than the New Orleans Pelicans. That's not the case. I think it's just a mix of where the franchise is right now ahead of this deadline, where there is uncertainty. There's a real lack of joy, and there's a lack of effort subsequently because of that. So, who knows? Who knows? I'm not going to say it's over until it's mathematically not possible to get to the 10th seed. Which I still think we're a while away from that because some of the teams around there are struggling as well. Like the Lakers had that game against the Raptors the other night where they won, but some of the officiating was obviously called out in the post game by the Raptors coach that got him a $25,000 fine. So some of the other teams are struggling, and the Warriors, they're just going to have to try and keep their head above water, hope that the Draymond return, hope that he's really, really motivated. He's looked at the mess that he's helped create and thinks, I've got to do some shit about this, and makes a real difference. I don't know. I don't know if players are going to listen, like some of the younger players are going to listen to him based on what he's done here over the last 12 to 18 months. But I guess as a fan, that's the one thing you're holding on to is, okay, there's a positive. Draymond is coming back. And Draymond, outside the suspensions this season, has played really well. He has. So, like, you're not questioning Draymond's form this season. Now, can he pick it up straight away in a manner that the Warriors need? We'll wait and see. Other than that, so I am going to Los Angeles on Sunday. So the Warriors have this Chicago Bulls, Milwaukee back-to-back. I will be able to watch the Bulls game. In fact, I will be able to watch both games, I believe. But I probably won't be able to do a podcast episode after either of those games. And I'm trying to work out whether or not I'll actually do some while I'm away for 10 days. I think I should, and I want to. I just won't be able to probably take the mic with me overseas. So the quality of the podcast episodes might be spiraling downhill a little bit for a couple of episodes until I come back. But the next time that you tune in and listen, I might be in Los Angeles without a microphone, and we'll go from there. I'm really hoping the Warriors make a trade in the 10-day period I'm in LA, because otherwise, no doubt, like what happened with the Jordan Poole, Chris Paul trade, I'll wake up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning and the trade would have happened at 2, 3 a.m. and I've just missed it for 4 hours. That's the joys of living in Australia. But it is what it is. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes you get these real late, past midnight trades, American time, that are kind of late in the day for me and perfect time. So I'm hoping that the Warriors can make a move either late in the day or whilst I'm actually in America in the next 10 to 12 days. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Longish episode again, 43 minutes, but this Warriors season deserves conversation and discussion right now because we don't know what direction it's heading with the trade deadline coming up in less than a month. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. Really appreciate all the comments that have come through, all the